It's time for your weekly dose of fight news now. I'm your host, John Pollock, and for the next 30 minutes, we are chatting the biggest stories in mixed martial arts. We'll take a look at this Saturday's UFC card on Fox, the fallout from UFC 181, CM Punk comments on his new career, plus I will be joining Robin Black for 3 rounds, and The Hobbit takes over the shift, and lots more, beginning with this week's newsmakers. Heavyweight action will headline this Saturday's UFC on Fox 13 card in Phoenix, Arizona. Former champion Junior Dos Santos returns to network television and squares off with rising talent Stipe Miocic with hopes of a championship bout in his near future. This will be the toughest test in the career of Miocic, while Dos Santos believes he will once again hold the gold.
The last time we saw Junior Dos Santos in the octagon.
And Junior has started to slow down already.
He was taking a beating at the hands of Cain Velasquez. With nearly a year out of action, and 2 definitive losses at the hands of the champion, many are wondering, what will Junior look like in his return? On the feet, there is no question the 30-year-old is one of the best in the division. However, after being thoroughly dominated by Cain's pace and wrestling, will we see the Brazilian take this one to the ground to prove he has made the adjustments to once again face Velasquez? When Stipe Miocic walks to the cage on Saturday night, he'll be facing the toughest test of his career. The bout was originally scheduled for May in Brazil. However, a hand injury to Dos Santos would allow light heavyweight Fabio Maldonado to step in and face the American in front of a rowdy Sao Paulo crowd. Miocic would overcome the Brazilian fans as he finished his overmatched opponent in just 35 seconds.
That's Maldonado. Oh, big right hand there. Stipe Miocic looking for the quick finish, and he's got it. Stipe Miocic.
The Ohio native has the wrestling credentials to put Dos Santos on his back. However, with a 3-inch reach advantage, he may choose to take his chances on the feet.
Into a battle, but he just ate a big left hand.
Can Cigano make a triumphant return to the octagon? Or will Miocic hand Dos Santos the first 2-fight losing streak of his career?
After more than a year away from the octagon, Nate Diaz returns on Saturday night after disagreements over money and his contract kept the 29-year-old on the sidelines. He has no easy task in front of him, sharing the cage on Saturday night with the surging Rafael dos Anjos, who is coming off the biggest win of his career over Benson Henderson this past June.
Nate Diaz! Nate Diaz has done it! What a capstone he puts on the trilogy here tonight!
After that impressive win, Diaz would take his ball and go home. Citing inactivity, the UFC would remove him from their rankings, and Dana White went so far as to question the Stockton native's value to the company.
The kid makes good money. The kid makes really good money, you know? And the unfortunate part is he's not a needle mover.
After months of posturing, the two sides finally came to terms, with Diaz being given a co-main event slot on Fox against the number 3 ranked lightweight fighter in the world. Rafael dos Anjos is coming into this one riding a 2-fight knockout streak. The first came against Jason High in June.
Drops him there.
And in August, he took out former champion Benson Henderson. Having a definite wrestling advantage, Dos Anjos will decide where this one takes place. And with his improved striking, he may choose to battle the Cesar Gracie black belt on the feet. For Diaz to pick up the win, he'll need to do what the Diaz brothers do: wear out his opponent with relentless boxing pressure, and if it hits the mat, look for submissions off his back. Can Diaz get the win and increase his value? Or will Dos Anjos send him back to Stockton?
This past Saturday night, Robbie Lawler followed in the footsteps of his mentors Pat Miletich and Matt Hughes as he became the newest UFC welterweight champion, taking a split decision victory over Johnny Hendricks. Both men commented on the fight at the post-fight press conference, with Lawler avenging his defeat from this past March and Hendricks searching for answers.
What a fight. I feel like I finished strong. I feel like I won the 4th and the 5th, and it was a close fight, man. When you have 2 guys who are tough as hell going in there and both stingy, sometimes you get fights like that. That's not how I thought the fight was going to go, and maybe we'll do it again sometime.
I'm going to be my worst critic. I don't need you guys, you know what I mean, to sit there and say, oh, you look like shit or you look like this. You know what I mean? I didn't stay light on my feet like I should have. I should have done a couple other things to secure my win, but you get lost in the moment. and that happened to me, and I'll be back. I had that belt, and I want it back.
The decision by the UFC to sign former pro wrestler CM Punk is still the talk of the industry, with equal amounts of praise and criticism being levied at the organization. We will now hear from Punk, who took part in a press conference with members of the media this past Saturday addressing these issues and the decision to come to the top mixed martial arts organization in the world.
I'm going to do a test weight cut. I'm going to use all the contacts I already have to get the best nutritionist, whatnot, and I'm going to see how I feel. I'm just not ruling out 170. I got to test my body, my body fat percentage and all that other stuff. I'm just not ruling out 170 just in case, but 185 is most likely the target. I'm coming into the biggest fighting organization in the world with an 0-0 record, and I understand that. I'm sure people are still going to throw that in my face, but that does not bother me. That's the reality of it, and I embrace that reality. Can CM Punk fight? Yeah, I think everybody on some level can fight. It's in our DNA. I intend to take this very seriously, and like I said with Joe Rogan, cage side, I respect everybody who's ever stepped foot in the cage, and before I'm done here, everybody will respect me as well.
Canadian Mitch Gallo is getting set for his trip down to Brazil, as he will be part of the co-feature next weekend when he meets former bantamweight champion Renan Barão. Gallo joined us in studio this past week and shared his thoughts on the Reebok deal that the UFC announced last week and how this is going to impact fighters such as himself in the sponsorship game.
Earlier this week, it was announced the whole UFC Reebok deal. For a fighter like yourself, is that something that what's your opinion on it? Because for some fighters, I'm sure the idea that I just show up on weigh-in day, I get paid a set amount, I don't have to worry about the stress of going out and getting sponsors, it's probably a positive. I think a lot it's kind of a wait-and-see approach.
Yeah. You know, I really don't have an opinion on it. You know, at the end of the day, they signed a 6-year deals with them. I could bitch about it or be on board with it. It doesn't really matter. I fight for the company. If I'm not happy, I should just ask for my contract and go fight somewhere else. I'm happy where I am. And, you know, it's just one of those things where I have no say in this matter. So whether I like it or not, that's not the important part. It's whether I want to keep fighting for them or not, and I do. I feel this is where I want to be.
Representing Canada as you have in the UFC, you're someone who, like a lot of fighters, in order to gain that experience and get the attention of the UFC, you had to get outside of Ontario. There just are not the cards for upcoming talent. They have to go sometimes not only out of the province, out of the country to get fights. Is that a real problem right now for upcoming Canadian fighters who have to travel just to get any fights under their belt?
Yeah, you know, I feel, you know, for me, I feel really blessed. I feel like before Ontario got legalized for MMA, I feel like Ontarians were getting more fights out of the province, going to Montreal, Quebec, and you know, I signed with the UFC when pretty much at the same time as Ontario legalized MMA. So I'm not in that process of trying to find fights and you know, competing a lot. If you look at my record, I've competed in Quebec, Gatineau, on a regular basis. Like, I was being called every 3-4 months to fight there. It wasn't a problem for me to get fights. So, you know, I'm for the fighters that are here right now and trying to get fights, I see there's a big problem and something that has to be changed.
And we'll stay in the bantamweight division as current champion TJ Dillashaw took part in a fan Q&A prior to UFC 181 this past weekend. The fight on everyone's mind at 135 pounds is Dillashaw defending against former champion Dominic Cruz, who made a spectacular return to action at UFC 178. And we now hear from Dillashaw and his thoughts on Cruz's skill set.
I feel like he's an opponent that's kind of hard to catch. He's used his elusiveness to not get hit and to be able to tag and move and work his way towards a decision. And I think the problem with me is that I'm able to cut him off with certain angles and that I'm a little bit more aggressive than he is. We're both very well rounded, but I feel like just my aggressiveness and my will to finish the fight is going to be the deciding factor in this one.
And that is all the news for this week. For your latest headlines, you can go to fightnetwork.com. And when we come back on the other side, it's 3 rounds, as myself and Robin Black will be looking ahead to the UFC on Fox card this Saturday night and the past season of TUF when we come back on Fight News Now.